Welcome to another episode of My Soul Connection. I'm your host, Billie Kavert. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what am I actually chasing? More money, more success, a bigger house, the next promotion, a fuller calendar? We spend so much of our lives working toward more without ever stopping to ask what all of that more is supposed to give us. My guest today, Scott Stillman, decided to find out. After realizing that the traditional path wasn't fulfilling, he and his wife sold nearly everything they owned, moved into a truck camper, and spent a year traveling, an experience that completely changed the way he thought about work, success, purpose, and how he wanted to live. Today, Scott is an author who has built his life around a beautifully simple philosophy: follow the energy. This conversation is about getting quiet enough to hear what you actually want, and with that clarity, having the courage to start moving toward it. I hope you're as inspired as I am to get clear, stop chasing more just for the sake of more, and start building your life around what you actually want. Here's my conversation with Scott Stillman. Hey, Scott, nice to see you, and thanks for coming on the show. After following you for so long on Substack, I'm really excited to have you here because you've actually given me a lot of inspiration in my own life. So thanks for coming on to chat with me.
Thanks for having me, Billie.
Absolutely. I just want to set the table for this conversation a little bit and why I was inspired to bring you on the show. Because first off, we have a tendency to introduce each other and ourselves through our roles. You know, I am a corporate woman, a mother, a wife, and all these things. But I like to get away from that and really get to the heart of what people are all about. And everything that you write about on Substack and in your books is very inspiring because it's not about the labels and the roles that we play in life. So I just want to introduce the guy that goes by Scott, who has walked a less traditional path in life and who has stepped outside of that box that culturally we've created and we've all gotten very used to living inside of.
Sure.
And part of this second season that I'm doing of My Soul Connection is really about moving into inspiring people to feel more alive in their lives, to go after what excites them and not just get stuck in the endless obligation that we all live in. So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got on this road.
Yeah, so I started out like most people on the traditional path out of college, just working regular, office type jobs. I worked at a bank. I was a loan officer. I worked various different sales jobs. And my number one goal was just to like find out when I could have a day off, there wasn't much fulfillment. So I started kind of going deeper into that. At first, it started with figuring out like the ways that I could work the least, I guess. Like my associates, would ask for a raise or whatever. I would say, you know what, I don't need a raise. I just need more days off. So instead of giving me X amount of vacation, give me another week or another 2 weeks or whatever. And I started realizing that that was something that was possible. So I just kind of turned my life into an experiment. And I had several jobs that I turned from full-time to as little as 2 days a week. One job I finally turned into a job that was about 6 days a month that I would work.
Nice.
I started getting really creative with ways to just like work as little as possible. But then even after all of that, I write about this in my books too, but like even after all that, I still didn't have fulfillment. Because I thought working as little as possible and still supporting myself would be like the ultimate goal. But then like I still didn't have that sense of purpose. And I think that's what's missing in so many people's lives is like they have everything that they set out to get. Maybe they have a decent job and they have a decent place to live and decent cars and all of that. But like they still feel like there's something's just like missing in their lives. And
Totally.
that's what I felt like. So I started just stripping life down, like simplifying radically. And finally to the point where my wife and I, we finally just sold everything we owned, used the money that we got from our cars and all the things we sold to buy a pretty simple truck camper. And we moved into that and just started traveling with everything we needed in our vehicle, basically. And just kind of to get down to the core of like, what is it? What is it that makes us happy? What is it that gives us fulfillment? And I figured that kind of the best way to do that is just simply just to go, like just drive.
Quit thinking about it and just Just head out.
Just
Yeah.
go and just get back to that childlike essence of like, well, what draws me in? Is it
Uh-huh.
people? Is it mountains? Is it art? Like, what is the thing that gives me the spark? And to really just follow that. And I call it following the breadcrumbs in a lot of my
Uh-huh.
books. It's like, okay, that interests me. So I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna go see that. I'm gonna get as interested as I can in that. And then this next thing interests me. And I realized that I think that's really the formula versus just like following the script that everyone tells us that we have to do this, we have to get this kind of job and make this amount of money and buy this kind of house and this car and everything versus really just getting curious about, well, what is it that interests me?
Yeah, and I think it's a good call out because in everyday life that we're living in American culture, we actually don't even have time to assess that. We don't have time to like really sink into that and then process it and get quiet and listen to our intuition and what's going to lead us to the next thing because we're just so freaking busy all the time. And one of your questions that you brought up in your book, I just finished the book Wilderness, the Gateway to the Soul. This was your first one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I just finished it.
that
Loved
was
it, by the way.
perfect. Thank you.
Um, and one of the questions that really got me was you said something like, what is all this going and running around and achieving in life? What is this all about? Like this chasing achievement. And I really sat with that for a bit and thought, yeah, what is that about? What am I actually setting out to do by achieving more? And the answer that I came up with is just, we're all just trying to achieve more, but we don't know what more is. It's like more money, more career
Right.
status, um, more shit that we have to keep in our house and upkeep
Yeah.
with. It's like after a while, it's just like, why do we want to accumulate more? Like even as it relates to dollars in the bank account, there's a point at which it's just more numbers going up. And not to say that there's not value in having some money and a cushion, but most people don't even have an end goal with that. They just keep trying to
Right.
make more money, but they don't even have a number that they're trying to reach. They just want more.
Right.
So I think it's awesome to take that time and assess that. And I don't think people can do that with just taking a week off on vacation because usually that's just enough
Right.
time to like check out enough to get your nervous system to resettle a little bit, but then you're back to the grind just like you were before.
Right.
So I was curious, how old were you guys when you decided to sell everything and take that trip?
Let's see, probably like pushing 40. Yeah.
Interesting. That was around the age that I hit where I really started questioning life and realizing that I was sort of living on autopilot. And I went through this whole spiritual awakening and like realizing that I'm just going through the motions of life. And like you said, had all the stuff, the status and everything that looked like success, but inside I was like just totally unfulfilled. So that was around the time that I started this path of like exploring different avenues and deciding I wanted to change my life in a way too. So, and you guys
Right.
were on the road for like a year?
A year. Yeah. Yeah.
And how did that change you guys? And like, how did you transition back after a year?
You know, after a year, we were done. Honestly, after a year, we were good. I mean, we could have kept going and living on the road, but
Mhm.
as far as like a system reset, we were reset. I mean, we were just completely different people than we were when we left, and it was like we felt like we were in a good position just to start over and to really just follow our interests instead of what you were saying of just always chasing more and more and more. Because
Mhm.
more is, yeah, what does more get you? It's just, you're in this endless cycle and you think there's like some end goal. Once I have the perfect amount of money or whatever, then I can finally live my life. And that, as we know, that never happens.
Right.
You age and your knees stop working and you lose your energy and your drive and finally you retire, but then it's, nothing's really changed. You're just not working anymore, but you're still living that same kind of life.
Yeah. And I've known a lot of people recently who've retired from my industry and some other people in my periphery. And I found that they actually really struggle in retirement too, because they don't know what to do with themselves. They've spent
Right.
so many years, 30, 40 years grinding and in this productivity trap where even if they're not working, they're filling it up with obligations that they're not even really that excited about. And then they get done with
Mhm.
work and they have, 8 to 10 hours a day free all of a sudden. And they have no freaking clue what to do with themselves because they haven't
Right.
nurtured their own interests over the years. So for me, that was my red flag of like, I don't want that to be my life. I want to start living with purpose and intentionality now. And then when I eventually stop working, I'll just do more of those things. But even with the work stuff, like, have you guys found a way to do work that you still enjoy, even though in your earlier years you were saying you wanted to work as little as possible? Has that changed at all? Like, where you found more interesting stuff to do?
Well, so that trip, first of all, I had no idea that I wanted to be a writer, right? That had not even crossed my mind. When we started the trip, I had a blog. I was like, well, we're going to do this trip. I might as well start a blog. And at first it was just photography. I've always been into photography. So I take pictures of all the beautiful places we were going. And then I started experimenting. I was like, how about if I write about a little essay to go with each thing? And so that's kind of what I mean by chasing the breadcrumbs. I was simply going after what interests me. And I'm like, well, photographs interest me. I like taking photographs. So I did that. I didn't do it to make money. I did it because it was fun. And then I started writing about the places we went, not because I thought it would get me a bunch of followers or because I thought I would make a bunch of money. I just thought that sounded fun. And at this time, my blog was like family members and friends. It was like 50 people.
Right.
So it wasn't
people who just had an interest in your life from a personal standpoint, who were wanting to know what you were up to, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, I got some positive feedback. People were like, "Oh, I really love your essays that are going with your pictures." So I was like, "Okay, cool. People like this. I'll keep doing it." And so of course, I got a little bit better at it because I practiced. And finally, after that year, I had tons of material, right? Because I was writing essays every day.
Right.
And it wasn't even my idea to put that into a book. It was my followers. They were like, "Hey, this is great. You should put it into a book." And I was like, I was like, "Oh, maybe someday, I might do that."
Right.
So to answer your question, we came back and, funny enough, people think like, "Oh, I could never quit my job," because we always have this idea in the back of our head, like, if I quit my job, I'll never be able to get a job as good as the one I just quit, right? That's always our biggest fear. I have the best job I'm ever going to get, and we know that's totally false, but that's the fear we have. I think it's common. So I quit that job, and they're like, "Well, why are you quitting?" And I said, "Well, we're gonna we're gonna go live in a truck camper and travel around." And they're like, "Well, how long are you gonna be gone?" I was like, "I don't know, probably a year." And I just kind of didn't really think much of that. Well, they actually called me in exactly a year, and said, "Hey, the manager that was here left, and we're struggling to find somebody. And remember that you said you were going to be gone for a year on this trip, and would you want to, take that position?" And I was like, "Wow!" And it's funny because my wife and I were kind of thinking about wrapping it up anyways because it was an amazing year, and but we were kind of thinking, life on the road, it's getting a little bit old. It'd be nice to settle down again. And we had just spent like all our savings on that trip.
Kind of had to eat again, huh?
Some income would be good. So I accepted the job. So we moved back it was in Boulder, Colorado, and I moved back and I instantly had a job again. Making more. They paid me more because before I wasn't a manager and now I was. So they actually took a year off of my job, came back, made more than I was when I left. But during that time, I had all that material from the trip, so I started like compiling that into that first book. So when I started writing this book, I realized there was a lot to publishing that I didn't understand. But I really I'm like, if I'm going to write a book, I want it to be good. I don't want to just like,
you don't want to just put something
together
out there just to put it out there. You want to
put it out there.
Yeah.
No, I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I want it to be good. So I ended up quitting that job after a year. And I started looking for something in the publishing industry solely for the sake of learning how to do it. And I found something. I actually found a job with a publishing company, work from home, so I could set my own hours because I wasn't wanting to work really full time. And I took this job and I started learning everything about publishing. It was so cool. I learned about editors, about the publishing process, and all of it. So I learned basically as much as I could. And then I published that book. I hired good editors. I did all the things by the book. And when I released it, and I followed like the book launch program that they said to do and all of that. And
Uh-huh.
when I released it, I mean, it did really well. That first book did really well.
That's
So I was
awesome.
like, oh, so maybe this will be my job then,
Maybe this is a
is
path. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe I'll just travel around and write books for a living. So I literally just I've done that ever since. I release a book a year approximately, and I just do whatever I want to do. At first, it was backpacking trips because I loved backpacking, and backpacking doesn't cost any money. I mean, once you have a backpack and a sleeping bag and
Yeah.
a few of the essentials, backpacking's free. I mean, you just as long as you can get to the trailhead, once you're in the woods, there's no fee for
Right.
that. So I finally was like, the longer I backpack, the more money I save, and the more material I come up with for my books. So I
Right.
just started doing that, and and that's evolved over time. And I moved into like more like the philosophy, self help. How can other people live this kind of lifestyle? Again, not because that was my idea, but people kept asking me. They were like, "Well, how do you just backpack all the time? And how do you do this, and how did you get to this point?" I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll write a book about that.
Yeah. You got to
So
listen to the
I,
feedback you're getting, and that's writes your story for you, right?
yeah. And then my most recent book was kind of about the introvert's path, because I'm an introvert, and
Mm-hmm.
so people would ask me about that. Well, how as an introvert do you do all of this? And I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll write a book about how introverts can use solitude to kind of unleash their creative genius and really find purpose in their lives. So it's all just kind of been following like the spark, like where's the
Right.
energy going?
Mm-hmm.
And wherever that energy feels the strongest, that's where I go. And I
Right.
don't base it off how much money I'm going to make. I don't base it on anything other than where's the energy. And that's how I've lived my life ever since that road trip. It's just, I'm going to go where that energy lies. And I also figure if I can show people how to do that themselves, to me, that's like super fulfilling
Right.
because rather than just following that script, and I think that's why everybody's so unfulfilled these days and why there's so much anxiety and depression is because no one's following the energy. We're all just following the script of what other people are doing and what other people say we should do. And that is the
Totally.
polar opposite of finding your true path.
Couldn't agree more. I'm trying to talk to my kids about that right now because they're 15 and 16. I have two boys, and so they're getting to that point of having to think about what life after high school is going to look like. And we're not people that
Right.
are forcing college down our kids' throats. If they would like to go to college, great, we'll support it. But I have a feeling I'm going
Right.
to have one that's going to be all about college and one that's probably not. And so we're talking about like following the passion in your life, and the money will come. Not that we were the best examples of that, but we're trying now to kind of unlearn some of what we've learned in the same way that you did.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really curious too, like, so when you came back from that trip, and I'm going backwards
Mm-hmm.
a little bit because I know you've kind of forwarded to writing the books, which I want to touch more on in a minute. But what you said that you and your wife had completely changed. How did you reintegrate in back into normal society and not just fall back into old patterns and old, just going back on autopilot?
Yeah. So, simplicity is really what it boils down to. What do we
Hmm.
need? When we moved into that truck camper, it was so liberating because like at home, we had something like most people, I don't know, like 14 plates and 14 bowls and 14,
Yeah.
probably 35 spoons. I don't know. Yeah. These things that accumulate that we think we have to have. Right.
Right.
So I'm like, well, all that stuff's not going to fit in this little camper that we're going to live in. So
Yeah.
literally we had one spoon each. We
Uh-huh.
had one fork each. We had
Yeah.
one bowl, one plate. Every piece of clothing was extremely intentional. This pair of shorts, this pair of pants, these 6 pairs of socks. Like everything we had was there for an absolute reason because it had to be, right? No more than what was essential would not fit. So we got used to that minimalism, and when we came back, we were like, well, what do we really need? So when we looked for a place to live, we looked for the smallest possible place because everything felt enormous compared to the truck camper. I mean,
Oh,
a,
I can't
a
even
one
imagine. Yeah.
bedroom, a one bedroom apartment felt so decadent. We're like
Hmm.
a shower,
Yeah.
a
A regular
bathroom with a
toilet. Like,
sink.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like all this stuff, even that seemed excessive almost. Like a one-bedroom apartment seemed excessive to what
Right.
we had been living with.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kind of we didn't go with that excess of like, oh, well, we have to have a spare bedroom for when we have guests, which is like how often, you know? So we're
Right.
like paying all this money so that we have room for guests that might come a couple
Right.
times a year. So we just got super intentional, and the place we found was very, very inexpensive to live compared to where we used to live. And instead of, we did end up selling the camper because we didn't need that. And with the money
Mm-hmm.
we had, we bought a used car for like $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the whole idea of like no debt, very small amount of income going out. And once we figured that out, that like if your bills are really low, then you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to make that much money and you can follow your passions. And then we found once we followed our passions, the money did come in.
Right.
And now our income is more than we've ever made in our lives. But it wasn't, again, because we were trying to do that. It was because we've just followed that energy and that passion. And when you're doing work that comes from your soul, then the universe is going to provide you with more. And so that's kind of the philosophy behind it, is really simplifying your life to the bare minimum. And it's almost
Mm-hmm.
like starting over from
Right.
scratch and saying, okay, what do we need? What do I really need to survive? And when you really start looking at that, it's not much. You need a roof over your head. You need food. I mean, how much
Few
do we
basic
really need? We have
essentials.
all this stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like,
It's like the money you save on that spare room that you are worried about people staying in. You know what? When they come the one time a year,
right.
pay for the hotel room nearby. You could save more money in the long run anyway.
Right. Yeah, it's like a buddy of mine I was talking to the other day. He travels the world, and people are always asking him like, "Well, how can you just travel all the time? How do you have money for this?" And he's like, "A good year for me is $25,000, and like a lot of years I make like not even $5,000." But he set his life up to the point he's like, people don't understand. He had just, like, his friend had mentioned he just bought a $4,000 couch. He's like, if you just bought a $4,000 couch, then end of conversation. Sorry, I cannot teach you about this kind of lifestyle because you
You're
just
right. You
won't.
have a lot
You're
of
not
work
going to
to
get
do
it.
before. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's like, for $4,000, I could spend 4 months in Thailand.
Right.
But
Yeah.
people don't
That's,
think that way. The people are like, oh, well, a 1 week vacation is, a lot of families spend what, five, six, $10,000, depending on what their standard is. So
mm-hmm.
they're thinking to travel the world, you need just like millions of dollars. And the people I meet on the road aren't those type of people at all. They've just minimalized their life to the point where they have very few fixed expenses and they're doing what they want.
Right. I'm curious, you said something a little bit ago that I want to come back to. You talked about being an introvert and then how you do this as an
Hmm.
introvert. What about for the extroverts out there like myself who are really social and like to be around people? I love being by myself for quite a long
Hmm.
time, and I could see being out in the wilderness for, well, I don't know. I have a little bit of a fear of being by myself in the wilderness for a week, but we'll come back to that in a
Yeah.
second. Um, but just the social aspect, is there, after someone's gotten a lot of alone time and solitude and time to think and like strip everything down and process what their
Hmm.
life is looking like, a lot of the stuff that you bring up in the book, how can they avoid getting like totally lonely or, just having that need for social interaction?
Sure. So my wife is polar opposite. She's an extrovert. So a lot of times I can really only speak for what we did, but
Sure.
so we're traveling around in the camper, and I'd go off into the wilderness, and I'd say, I'm going to go on this backpacking trip for 7 days, let's just say. We've met friends all over the country, so
Uh-huh.
I might drop her off to go see friends or something like that. We kind of do things different. If she's feeling the need to be social and I'm feeling the need to have 7 days of solitude, we don't let that hinder our relationship. She goes off and does what she needs to do and visits friends, and I go off, do what I need to do and go commune with nature for a week.
So
So
it's kind of like
yeah,
take what you need. I was wondering
yeah,
about that actually, because obviously the book I read was about your initial experience being in the wilderness a lot. And I don't think the message was about everybody should get out in the wilderness for a week by themselves, several times a year. I
no,
think it was more of like, for you, that's what helps you tap into yourself and get connected and get better connected to the universe. But there are different ways that people can do that. And it's kind of about finding what works for you. Although I think everybody
right.
needs a little more nature in their life.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're just trying to make whatever it is that really sparks that joy and that childlike feeling inside of you, take that and run with it. It doesn't have to necessarily be going backpacking.
Right, exactly. And going into nature doesn't have to be backpacking at all. It can simply be taking a walk. And even if you're an extrovert, though, I would suggest spending some time alone and getting away from the electronics,
For
leaving your
sure.
phone at home or turning it off during your time in nature and just getting quiet. It doesn't have to be for 7 days. It can be for an hour, but it does help you reset. And it does help you get some clarity on what brings meaning to your life and what you should do. A lot of people come to me and they're just like, I just want someone to tell me what I should do. I don't know what I should do. And I think the problem is you're looking for someone to tell you what to do. And you need to listen to yourself to find out what you should do. But you're never going to be able to hear that if every moment is spent either talking to someone else or scrolling on your phone endlessly.
Absolutely.
You never have that solitude, that time where your brain can just take a break and just look around and say, oh, wow, look at that. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And I think I get that a lot with people I say, well, what are you interested in? Especially with young people today. And they're like, I'm not interested in anything. And I'm like, well, then you're not paying attention because there's always something interesting going on. Take a walk down the street, leave your phone at home, leave your headphones, leave your music at home, your earbuds, and just walk. What
Right.
interests you? Look around. Well, nothing interests me. Okay. Keep looking. Eventually you're going to find something interesting. And then you just start following it, like with that very kind of childlike essence. And before you know it, you're finding all kinds of things that are just interesting. And you're looking without agenda of, oh, well, what can like get me a job or find me a career or make me a bunch of money. You're just looking with that childlike innocence of, oh, isn't that interesting? And then you just follow that. And before you know it, you're finding purpose.
Totally agree. Both my kids are, as much as I've tried so hard not to let them get addicted to their phones, they are addicted to their phones. And especially come summertime, when they're in school all day, they come home, they go to football practice, they're busy, with other interests that they have. But man, summertime, I just watch them and I'm like, get off your phones and get outside. And they don't understand because I'm like you when I'm in Lake Tahoe, for example, I go out on 2-3 hour walks in nature, hikes, whatever I have time for. Phone only stays with me in case I have an emergency, but I never look at it. I'm not listening to anything. I'm just paying attention to what's around me. And even to the point where I try not to label things that I see. Like if I see a bird, I'm not like, ooh, look at that bird. I try to just actually listen to the sounds and appreciate watching them interact with one another. And, we come across all kinds of wildlife, of course, and usually my dog's with me. And, just even watching her instincts, it's kind of fun. You can like sort of mimic the way that a dog behaves out in nature. And it really takes you back to a very grounded, rooted place. But I talked a lot in the first season of this podcast about tapping into your intuition and how important it is to spend some alone time. And the go-to is to think of meditation. And it's like, yeah, meditation's great. That's one way to do it if you want. I'm a big meditator, but I could spend a whole week by myself and have no problem with it. And people are surprised when they hear that because they know I'm a rather social creature too. But I totally agree. You've got to have that time to like break it all down and have some solitude. And something you said actually reminded me too, I wanted to ask you about. You talked about like the fact that we're always trying to make decisions, plan every single little thing out in our lives. And we get this like decision fatigue, right? You just get overwhelmed with all the decisions. And when you think about back when we were kids, I grew up in the 80s and it's like, we didn't 80s and 90s. We didn't have phones. So when you're home by yourself after school, because I don't know, most of my friends and myself, we never had parents around during the day. They were out working. So you're home by yourself and you're like, what am I going to do? You don't have a phone to look at to give you ideas. You just have to come up with it internally. So we'd go out. I grew up in Sonoma and we had lots of hills behind us and tons of forest land. And we'd go hiking back there, found rope swings and waterfalls and, creatures and things. And when we got bored, we figured it out. And our kids these days don't know how to be bored, honestly. But it's not just kids. Sadly, it's most adults too. So I think this is good for people to hear.
Give yourself the opportunity to be bored. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and you said you mentioned in the book that usually you have it kind of like takes you a few days to acclimate to being by yourself and the utter quiet that's around you all the time. And then once you
Right.
do, it sounds like something clicks and you just start seeing things differently. Is that kind of how that works? Do you think people just have to break through that first initial moment of anxiety about being alone and quiet?
Yeah. And that's really that's the backpacking experience for me. And it's
Uh-huh.
really still that way. The first day is like my mind is just racing with all the things going on back home and just kind of the excitement of the trip. And the second day, a lot of times is cravings. It's like, oh, I wish I had a cold drink, or I wish I had, a hamburger, whatever,
Yeah.
all the things that I can't have. Right. And then it's not until the third or the fourth day that the mind finally starts subsiding. And I get that kind of like what you were talking about, where I look without agenda and without labels. I just look and I notice my mind just slowing and finally stopping. And to me,
Uh-huh.
that's pure meditation, not,
Uh-huh.
sitting in lotus pose, trying not to think, which
Uh-huh.
really not really that much fun for me. I mean, it's certainly possible to do it that way, but the long walk is the shortcut, as I say, because your brain just naturally stops thinking. And
Right.
what a place to be, because that is not reality when you're in society. Everyone's brain is going at 1,000 miles a minute, and we never give our brains the chance just to look around and see. And that's very different for the human species today, because we weren't for thousands of years without this technology. And I don't think that meaning was a problem just a few hundred years ago. Um,
Even meaning,
First of
you
all,
said, like finding
yeah,
meaning?
like I
Mm-hmm.
don't think people were looking for meaning in their lives because it
Right.
just existed naturally. Like
Yeah.
even if they were working the fields, or they're hunting and gathering, or building a structure, that was meaning. They were finding meaning in
Uh-huh.
everything they were doing. But now it's like we're doing everything so that we can get something else. I mean, when we built a structure or we hunted, we simply did that for the sake of itself, so we could get food. Not so
Right. It
that
was
we
a
could.
survival thing.
Right. So there was meaning in our lives every single day of everything that we were doing, and we would get good at these things. And it's just who we were. We weren't trying to figure out who we were. We knew who we were. But now we're doing these kind of abstract jobs where you can't really see the meaning necessarily. And you're doing all these things so that you can make money, so that you can buy the house, so that you can pay the bills. And then we almost forget like what the so that is. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well,
It's like I
so
said in the
that,
beginning, we just are chasing more and we don't even really know what we're chasing anymore.
yeah. And then we
Yeah.
wonder why we can't find meaning in our lives, because we don't really even know what we're striving towards.
Right. It's talking about the meditation aspect of it. I've heard a lot of people talk about going on vacation, and this is me too. I'm not, judging because I've been there many, many times where you're like
Hmm.
so excited about this upcoming vacation and it takes you 3 or 4 days, the first part of it to wind down, or maybe 2 or 3 days to get all the work stuff out of your head and all the obligations out of your head. And then you finally chill and you start to relax and your nervous system calms down. And then you maybe
Hmm.
have like, if you're on a week long vacation, you maybe have a few more days to ride that wave, right? And then you're
Hmm.
like, ah, shit, I got to go back to work. It's just like, it's just that dread of going back to all the obligations. And I know people think about this, but they don't necessarily take action on it. And that's really what I want to change by kind of exposing some of these conversations to people and changing
Hmm.
my own life. If it feels so good to escape your own life on a week-long vacation and it feels so dreadful
Right.
to go back, then obviously something's got to change, right? And
Something has to change.
yeah, and I think where I'm curious what you would tell people here is how do people really take that first step? I think it's overwhelming for people, especially people who have children. The job,
Hmm.
like I always think about if I didn't have kids, I could do things a lot differently. And not to say that I don't want my kids, I'm glad I have them. But it is difficult when you have kids in school and you have, all the stuff that they're societally sort of trained to do and like, and, all the sports and
Right.
activities and things like that. But it's really hard for people to consider what they would actually do to change some of that when they have the obligations of a family. It sounds like you don't
Sure.
have children. Am I correct on that?
Correct. Yes.
But you probably have a lot of people in your network, in your sphere that live a life similar to yours who do, or maybe they don't. I don't know. Can you give any advice to people like that who the job is
Yes.
one thing, but trying to figure out all the rest to raise a family?
Yeah. Um, when you start focusing on the life you want rather than what you think will get you there, you're on the right
Uh-huh.
track. And that's where I had it wrong in the beginning. I was focusing on what I thought would get me the life that I want, right? Which was work a job, make as much money as possible, try to scale back the hours, do all of this so that I can finally someday, right, have the life that I want
Uh-huh.
versus focusing on the life that I want. And once I made that shift, it was all very simple. It seemed so much easier. Just get really, really clear. Write it down. My wife and I have always done vision boarding where you cut, pictures and phrases out of magazines and put them on
Uh-huh.
poster boards. Just really getting clear on what it is you want, because that's a question that most people can't readily answer, what it is that you
Agree.
want. So get super clear on what it is that you want and get down to the very nitty gritty detail of your perfect life. Then, and only then, can you start working towards that life.
Right.
Once you know what it is, so you can start taking baby steps. It's like writing a book. People say, "Well, how can you possibly wrap your head around writing a book?" And I don't. That sounds impossible to me. Writing a book.
Too overwhelming. Yeah.
I write a paragraph,
Uh-huh.
and then I write another paragraph, and then I write another paragraph. And over time, those paragraphs end up equaling a book. But I don't set out to write a book. And it's the same thing. Once you get clear on that life that you want, find little steps that you can take, small steps
Uh-huh.
that will get you closer to that life that you want. And to answer the question about children, and I don't have children, and people are always asking me, well, how can I do it? I have 7 children. I had that comment the
Oh
other
God,
day.
7.
And it's like, well, yeah, I'm not saying there are absolutely ways to do it. And these people have written books about it. You'll find them. There are people that have traveled the world with kids. So go get on Amazon or go get on Goodreads or surf the internet instead of just mindlessly scrolling on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or something like that.
Right.
Start researching. Well, how did other people with children do it? And I bet you'll find blogs, you'll find stories, you'll find books, you'll find all kind of resources of people with kids who are living the kind of life you are trying to live. So you start taking those baby steps, you start doing research, and before you know it, your life is changing rapidly from those small steps.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I don't want to live my life with regrets, but there's part of me that's like looking back going, man, I really wish I would have acclimated my kids to a certain lifestyle when they were younger. Because now at 15 and 16, it's very hard to get them to want to change with us. But at the end of the day, we pay the bills and raise them. So they kind of have to just follow along and do what we do. But I do think even if you're not going to like go as extreme as selling everything and living on the road for a year, there's lots of pockets of time, summertime, Christmas break, they have lots of breaks throughout the year if you're wanting to keep them in a traditional school system where you can go do some really adventurous stuff and maybe take a significant amount of time off. But yeah, I think figuring out the clarity, the vision board, like you said, I do a lot of intuitive writing. I did a podcast episode about this where you write with your non-dominant hand because that actually triggers the right side of your brain and the creative side to get down to the subconscious and beneath everything that you're trained to do and think. So I think there's a lot of different methods and ways to get clear, but you're going to have to take some time consistently to get to that place, find the clarity, get the vision, and then start making the baby steps toward it. So in wrapping up here today, what is a day in the life like for you now? I know you're a writer. You're not on the road now. You have a home.
So I live in Durango, Colorado, where I'm surrounded by all the things I love. So we have a river, we have great hiking, mountain biking trails. We have a lake. I wake up in the morning. I manage my social media. As you know, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Substack. I'm on Instagram. I'm on
Mm-hmm.
TikTok. All these different places. And people often ask you, like, well, does that take away from your your time and your free time, your freedom, and all of that? And the answer is absolutely not. I wake up. I have coffee. I do some social media management. And then I go for a hike or a mountain bike ride, or I kayak the river or something like that. In the afternoon, I come back, I have lunch, I do some more social media management. Maybe I'll write a blog post for Substack. I'll do a few posts on, Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And then maybe later on, I'll hit the lake, or I'm big into wing foilings, like a windsurfing sport type of thing.
Oh,
So
cool.
we have a lake here. I
Okay.
go do that. We have a group of us, and maybe I'll do that in the afternoon. So I'm doing what I want every day. And if I want to go backpacking, people are like, well, what do you do with your social media? You're backpacking for a week. I'm like, the social media will be there when I get back. I
Yeah.
really don't think they're going to miss me. I don't think the whole world's going to be like, Scott Stillman didn't make a post for a week. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right.
Like,
And
it's
if they
just,
do, then you're almost like not living true to what you say that you're doing if you're going backpacking and trying to do social media posts. I mean, obviously you wouldn't have reception and everything,
yeah.
but still, yeah, it doesn't work.
And never am I going to bring my phone into the wilderness and do, posting from my campsite. I'm never going to do anything like that.
Right.
I'll take pictures because I love taking pictures. And then when I come back, I'll compile that into my social media posts. So as you're hearing, yeah, a lot of my work now is social media and making posts and blog posts and articles and things like that. But I don't really write all that much. I write when I'm in the wilderness, and I write old style and just with a pen and a
Mm-hmm.
in a journal. So when I'm in the wilderness, I do a lot of writing, but that does not involve a phone or a computer or any sort of electronics at all. And then when I'm home, I'll transcribe those into Microsoft Word,
Mm-hmm.
and and over time those become books.
It's awesome. Yeah, that's another example of taking it bit by bit, right? You're just biting it off into chunks when it makes sense in your life, when you naturally have content to write about, right? Because you're writing about what you're doing in those moments and what's coming up for you. And then, yeah, you can manage it when you get home.
Yeah, I don't force it or anything like that, or set deadlines necessarily.
Yeah, I've often thought, like, even for this podcast, I'm just going to try it. For me, I just had so much stuff in my head about things I wanted to share and conversations with interesting people I wanted to have. So I just decided to try this, but I wasn't ever really trying to, monetize it or become some big podcaster or become famous or whatever. I just like talking to people and hearing
Mhm.
their stories. And if it resonates with other people, great. But I've had a little bit of a fear of like getting onto social media, not because of showing my face or anything like that, but it's like the antithesis of what I'm speaking against in a way. Like I think people need to get
Mhm.
off their phones and off electronics. And here I am knowing that if I want to make this podcast successful, I have to use social media as a method. But I really like the thought of if you are just compartmentalizing the things that you have
Mhm.
to do to get the word out, and
Right.
that's the method that we have to communicate with, a lot of people these days. As long as you're not sitting there scrolling for 2 hours, then who cares? Like, you're just getting on to share your message with people and cutting it off and going to live your life and do your thing. So,
The best way to get people off their phones is to find them on their phones. The people that
yeah,
are
right?
already the people that have already figured it out, you don't need to talk to them, right? They've
Yeah,
they already
they're
understand.
off doing stuff. They're not scrolling and
Yeah,
seeing your posts.
they're
Yeah,
already
I
doing
hear you.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, like, I do use social media every single day, but I
Mhm.
use it as a one-way outlet.
Mhm.
So I don't surf social media. So
Right.
never do I just look at posts randomly. I use it to get my message out, and then I turn it off.
Right.
So even though I might be on social media for an hour, that hour is extremely intentional in creating things that I think are going to get the message out and are going to help people maybe turn that phone off and walk into nature and find that meaning and to replace that emptiness that they feel, which is
Right.
probably why they're on social media in the first place, to
Right.
kind of fill that hole. We use it
Mhm.
as a self-soothing method because we don't
Right.
know what to do with ourselves when we're not at work or doing something. And because we don't know what we're doing, we just scroll, scroll, scroll. So if I can make them stop and think about that for a moment, then
You've done your job. Yeah.
I think it's worthwhile. Yeah.
Probably no better compliment to you and nothing more fulfilling than having people come back to you later, maybe send you a note or an email or something like that saying, hey, you've really inspired me and this is how my life has changed. And, maybe they're off doing things and not spending that time in that way anymore. And that's really the ultimate goal is to get more people to kind of wake up and start living life. And this entire season is going to be about that. Like, how do we get out of this autopilot, societal obligations that, filling up our calendars with a bunch of crap, get out there and live life, have some excitement in your life again, and hopefully inspire people even just to start taking baby steps. So I think this is
absolutely.
Hopefully this conversation will resonate with people and we'll hear about the things that they're starting to do to change their lives. That would be meaningful for me too.
I hope so.
Well, thank you, Scott. This was awesome. The book I'm really interested in reading next is the, now I forgot the title.
I don't want to grow up.
That's it. Thank you. This is one thing kids will help you with too. They definitely help you realize when you're taking life too seriously and you just need to chill out a little bit. And I have definitely recognized I've taken life too seriously over the years and I'm trying to just get back to my childlike nature. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. I'll put your website and all your social handles and all that in the show notes so people know how to find your work. I'll continue to follow you on Substack for sure. I don't play around a lot on the other ones, but I love seeing your pictures and your inspiring quotes. So
thank you.
It was great to meet you. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
All right. You too, Billy.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of My Soul Connection. If you found the information useful, be sure to rate and review the episode and share it with others as well. And make sure you subscribe to the My Soul Connection podcast so you'll never miss an update. Until next time, keep connecting with your soul.